Hello everyone, Namaskar and welcome to another session of Kalinga Literary Festival presents KLF Bhava Samvad. Today we are going to have a discussion on the book being authored by Kasturi Ray, an eminent journalist and the author of the book. The book being titled the book being titled Draupadi Murmu from the tribal hinterlands of Odisha to Raisina Hills, and she would be having this discussion going ahead with the eminent professor and translator, a literary scholar, Professor Jatindra Nayak today. And I really hope that all our viewers be able to get this discussion very insightful. And I would request both our speakers, the guests today, to carry forward with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Devamitra.
Thank you. Okay. Um, Let me begin by congratulating you, Kasturi, for
Thank you, sir.
having written this biography of
Thank you.
President Draupadi Murmu. So you deserve congratulations for authoring this book, completing this book in a matter of a few months. So I will begin with the obvious question, which arises in the minds of any reader. What led you to take up this subject? What led you to take up the task of authoring the biography of Draupadi Murmu,
Good
the
afternoon,
president?
everyone. Thank you, sir, for the congratulatory message. It gives me immense honor actually to be in the same panel as you. Why Draupadi Murmu, the subject? Well, there were a couple of reasons when I started working on it. There were a couple of reasons, but more and more reasons got added with time. Actually, the first thing was a sense of inquisitiveness because it was imminent given the noise around the personality. Ever since actually she was chosen as the presidential candidate, it naturally came to me to find out more about her. And being a part of a newspaper organization where I work, we found stories every now and then coming here and there. And I wanted to read more and more about the personality because her name was also there in the previous presidential elections, but somehow she could not make it. And then when this time it came, I wanted to know what is that speciality about this tribal lady who people are nominating to be the president of the country, the first citizen of the country. So my inquisitiveness grew and I started doing my own research. There was no question of writing any book about her till then. I flipped the chapters of her life through figments from here and there, and I realized I was in awe of the person she was. Actually, a sense of admiration gave way to my inquisitiveness. And then there was this news of a publishing house coming up with a biography, and obviously they had chosen the writer as well. So here it was a sense, I thought for a while that I wish I could have been the author, but that feeling remained dormant for a very long, 3 to 4 months, when I suddenly got a call from Rupa Publications. The commissioning editor called me up, and she asked me if I would be keen on writing the life of the president. So without realizing the challenges in store for me, without even thinking, in a wink, I just said yes. Actually, I was overwhelmed. So there was no question of a thought coming into it. I just said a yes. And then that's how Draupadi Murmu happened.
Uh, you have already mentioned challenges that you
Yes.
faced or had to cope with challenges while writing this biography. Challenges while writing this book, challenges while collecting material for this book, completing it in a very short time. And then, of course, like all authors, we know that there are challenges of getting the book edited, getting the book accepted by a publisher, and getting the book processed for publication. So, could you throw a little more light on the challenges that you faced, challenges that you coped with um, while writing the book, and while getting the book ready for the press, and while uh, preparing the book for publication? So let's talk about the challenges that you overcame. or tried to overcome um, while writing and getting the book published?
There were many challenges actually. If I say that, like from the day one till the book was launched on May 10th, I think every day was a challenge. So, to begin with, decoding the life of the in-term president, the sitting president itself, was a big ask and a big task. You cannot take anything for granted. Every sentence had to be weighed for fact check. Every word was to be verified. Every point mentioned need to be corroborated with something. That was the biggest thing that I faced, the biggest challenge I faced when I started thinking of a structure. When I come to talk of a structure, a biography of a person who has grown on from a tribal, the remotest villages of tribal Odisha, to get on to the Raisina Hills, to becoming the first citizen of the country. The amount of milestones she has carved, the amount of struggle she has taken, itself was very difficult to compile within a very short time. And I did not actually know how to go about it unless I started writing about what to do, what and what next. When I sat doing it chronologically, it did not fall in place. When I tried to do it in two, three other methodologies also, it did not fall into place. But finally, when I succeeded in giving a structure to the publishing house and it was okayed, then the second challenge started. The second challenge was the deadline. The deadline was very short and very strict, and very short, as in I would not say that it's an easy affair to write a book in any case. And writing the interim president's book in straight away 90 days, that is 3 months time, was certainly a big challenge for me. Of course, there were a lot of reasons why that 90-day deadline was given to me. I would not want to go into that, but those 90 days challenge, I took it up upon myself, thinking that as journalists we are dealing with every minute deadline in our regular stories. Every day we have a deadline. We do not have monthly or yearly deadlines. So meeting deadlines is just a thing of practice that we have. I have been successfully taking up. So I thought, why not? Like, let me give it a try. So I took upon myself that 90-day task, and I thought that the manuscript has to be ready within the 90th day. And the 90th day happened to be the one when the president addressed both houses of parliament. And I had to include that last bit into it also. So those were the things that went into first the initial thought of doing it. Then they were, she might be a normal achiever for anybody till then, but she actually wasn't. She was an exceptional personality, and her career over 2 decades had many roadblocks which she had turned into milestones. Because I did not get an opportunity actually to meet her, to talk to her, or even to talk to her immediate family due to some protocol issues, I was limited to a few people, few people who knew her well as a person, and scheduling all these within a structural format was actually Herculean. So then you had to decide about interviews, the clippings, the archives, the YouTube links. Those were in circulation then. And those were my only ways to begin with the work. The narrative had to begin with some at some point. And then after a few days, I thought, touring to her native place and the places where she has worked would also be important. So I should do everything simultaneously and then maybe put together whatever I gather. So then the part of touring started. So when the part of touring started, you never know one particular place to visit. There were so many places where she had etched a mark from her childhood till she became a minister. Even after that, she had everywhere she had left her footprints. So going to all those places was not easy at all. That was a big challenge. And being in a full-time profession here, a full-time job, it was difficult for me to schedule the touring, to schedule the interviews, visiting people, talking to them. Those were the other challenges that I faced. And when you go to people and meet them, they would not meet you at the first place. They would not say, yes, come, we are ready to talk. So the timings also. Then, of course, the most important part or most important challenge was after a lot of struggle, when I started writing, compiling them as per my structure, there were things that I felt were not fitting into place, and then I left it to the editorial team to decide what to do with that. So once it went to the editorial desk, I think the 3 months that I devoted to writing the manuscript, the editing of say around another 2 months was even more difficult a thing that I faced. So that was something, for every line that I wrote, for every word that I wrote, for every adjective that I used, for every statement or quote that I used about Madam President or anybody surrounding her, about her, was questioned. The editors questioned me on every line of the book. And it was actually, like, it took a lot of time to search, although I was going through making a bibliography of the whole of things, but then it wasn't that easy to give them every link, and most of the links were also in Odia, which Rupa editors would not understand. So I had to translate that Odia thing into English and then give it to them, so they would understand that what I have written has coherence with what has already been mentioned. So these were the things that that made it a really big challenge for me. But now, on hindsight, I think the challenge was worth it. The challenge was worth
Okay.
it, definitely.
Is it the first book length study that you have done, or have you written books before
No,
earlier?
this is my first book. This is, I think, my first book. And you can call it my debut. Yes, I've written a lot of
Okay.
stories as a journalist, but never a book. This was my first book.
Yeah, because as a journalist, you write stories, you write reports, you write news stories, news items. So a book length study is something new to a journalist. Very few journalists begin by writing books. So do you think that writing a book in itself presented an exciting challenge or frustrating challenge, whatever the case may be? But I think having to write a book rather than a report, rather than a news story. Was it a challenge in itself?
It was. It certainly was a challenge in itself.
Okay, we all
Because,
know that biographies are more than curriculum vitae or a linear narrative of somebody's life from birth to
yes,
adulthood or death or whatever. Biographies are much more than just simply recounting the incidents that take place in the course of one's life or one experiences in the course of one's life.
yes.
So, particularly after Freud, the biographers place heavy emphasis on childhood experiences. The way one's childhood unfolds, I think, leaves a shaping influence, impact on the rest of one's life. It shapes or forms one's personality, sometimes leaves scars on one's uh, mind and heart. So, childhood is extremely important. Childhood, from a biographer's point of view, is an extremely important part, source of information. Um, for when they deal with the life or reconstruct the life of the subject of the biography. So, how much importance did you pay to lay on the childhood of Mrs. Murmu? Did you do
Uh,
research on her childhood? Did you think that events during her childhood, events which unfolded in her childhood, left a mark on her subsequent career?
Certainly, certainly. That chapter, I would say, has been named. I would because like from her childhood, she had this notion that we have mentioned it as the fragrance of tulsi leaves, and childhood is the name. So, as we say in Odia, Tulasi Dui Patruru Base, that's what her teacher told me, and the chapter was named accordingly. So, she had given indications from her childhood about the future course of action that she's going to give her life, knowingly or unknowingly. So everything about her childhood had something important in it to learn from, for me, also for everybody who will read the book. From the very beginning, the birth of a girl child is celebrated in the tribal families is one big lesson that touched me a lot, because that was celebrated in a grand way when she was born in her village. Her father celebrated it, and her father's contribution to her education, where girls nowhere were a part of school life. From her generation, actually, when she started going to school, her friends also started going to school. So she was the first one who initiated education among girls also. And and in the school also, whenever she studied in the school, she has left her marks among her teachers, And that is what I got to know from her teachers, that in the classroom, she was the most sincere, though she was not exceptionally good at studies, which her teachers have corroborated. She was not exceptionally good at studies, but studies are not the only thing that we learn in the school. Discipline is something, diligence is something, hard work, and the ability to take forward responsibilities was what she was having inherent in her, which her teachers had noticed from her childhood. One example, I'm sure everybody must have read about it somewhere or the other, that because it was on a difficult terrain and going to school was a difficult thing for her during rainy days. It was heavily raining one day, and the way she swam to school, because she had to be there in the school, kept her teachers shocked. Even the boys were absent from the class, but hardly 3 4 students were present, and Madam President was also one of those who was present. And when her teachers asked, "How did you manage to come?" she said, I swam to the school because the current was heavy. Waters flowing from the nearby mountains were so strong, the current was so strong. She still swam across, and she reached the school on time. She wanted to be on time. And also the importance of doing things for others. Serving mankind came next, but doing things for others. She had gotten some books from her seniors to read, which she returned after her school in Uparbeda village. But apart from returning the original books she had got from others, she gave her own geometry box, she gave her own school books to other students, saying that this might be of use to others who do not have money like me. They would need the money. So she wanted to always be of help to somebody. That was also one part of it. Another angle would be when she wanted to do higher studies, she had the guts. She was so destined. She was so uh, uh, keen on doing higher studies, because her school then was up to class 7 in Uparbada village, and she wanted to study more. So she had the guts to go to the dais of a minister, Kartik Maji, who was a Swatantra Party MLA then, and he was addressing a meeting, and she gathered her certificate, her books, her notebooks, her mark sheet, and she went, climbed atop the dais, showed it to him, saying, "I would like to go for higher studies. Could you please arrange for my studies somewhere in Cuttack or Bhubaneswar, where I can go for higher studies? I want to study more. I want to be educated. I want to work so that I help my family." She had that guts from that leadership quality, that guts to go to the stage and talk to a MLA, which normally no child would dare to do. She did that. And not only that, her connect to tribal tradition from her childhood, you will hear almost all her speeches even today are some way or the other connected to the tribal connect that she had in her childhood. Be it cutting of a tree, be it criminal crime cases against villagers, everything has given shape to her sensibilities. So she was always influenced, like whatever has been a part of her childhood has certainly made her the person what she is today. I feel her childhood has a massive imprint on her career in the later half of her term as the minister, as the governor, and now we are seeing her as the president also.
Okay. Of course, you have given a very vivid portrait of her childhood in the biography you have written. Then I'll go to the next point, I think, which is important for a biographer, something that biographers usually do when they write about an important person or someone who has undertaken a remarkable journey through life. So, the next thing, apart from childhood, that biographers often emphasize is this life changing encounter, that in everyone's life comes a moment when we encounter something or someone which changes the course of our life, which alters the course of our life, and we change direction, we move in another direction. Something happens to us, we get transformed. So, can you have you come across in the story of uh, Draupadi Murmu's life, which has changed the course of her life, which has made her change the direction of her life, which has reshaped her life in a significant way. So, can you think of any life changing encounter that she underwent, that she experienced when she was very young, so that her life took a new turn. So that the journey from the remote tribal hinterlands to Raisina Hills could be made possible.
There are quite a number of turning points, life-changing moments in the life of Madam President. The first point that strikes one is she actually belonged to a family of pradhans, the village leaders, and her father was very well to do. Like they were, their previous generations were also very well to do, but two back to back um, uh, tragedies in the form of floods and famine, and like that disturbed their life like anything, and they were pushed to penury. So what happened is Murmu from the very beginning of her career wanted to study more, but the only driving force for her was to take her family to a better financial condition where they will be able to fend for themselves. She can earn for her family, and her life motto was to become educated, to get a good job, and fend for the family. She had in her own interviews said that I have never wanted to become anything more than an employee who earns enough to sustain the family, but everything else happened by chance. But yes, the turning moment in her life, I would consider as the one where she met the minister to make a seat. No person from the village had stepped outside the village to study, and she was the first one who stepped outside the village to go to the school and then do higher studies. She was the first woman, first girl from the village to go out and study in Ramadevi Women's College, and there are many firsts to her credit. But yes, the second turning point that came to her, that was instrumental in making her the people's person she is today, is her zeal to serve people of her own place, people of Rairanpur, people of, and now people of the country, of course. So the life changing moment next was when she was suddenly approached by people, given her public service, given her membership of several associations, socio-cultural organizations. One fine day, people of the Bharatiya Janata Party, then in 1997, suddenly approached her to contest the Rairingpur Council elections, the NSA elections, where she was not at all prepared to get into the uh, scene because of many reasons that she has narrated. Is no woman of tribal families had ever stepped into politics. No woman had ever thought of going into public life in a way that family life will be affected. So the moment she decided, of course, a lot of factors were there to which made her decide that yes, I'm going to do this. That one factor, when she agreed, when she discussed with her husband about how to deal with, and she has also said that like people have to face different kind of people in their lives, in the political lives particularly, and I don't think I could survive that kind of a political atmosphere prevailing in the state then. So I was never interested to get into politics, but the moment she decided to take a plunge into politics, I think that was the biggest turning point of her life as far as her career is concerned, as far as her presidential term now is concerned, because that is where the foundation was laid. And the second turning point, which has made her the person she is, which has made her realize the importance of um, people, the importance of serving people, is the amount of loss she has faced in her family by losing her three children. Only one is surviving now. Three children she's lost, her husband, her mother, in quick succession. That was another turning point in her life that may not have a direct bearing with her career right now, but yes, it has certainly shaped her as a very different human being altogether.
Do you think all the tragedies that scarred her life um, has made her more compassionate, more humane, has enabled her to empathize with the suffering of. She already comes from a community which um, has undergone a lot of suffering. The tribals everywhere have been at the receiving end of many problems. So, do you think these very painful experiences has given her resilience and her enabled her to empathize with people? Because recently, I think on many occasions, she has always sided with the marginalized, sided with or expressed solidarity with people who suffer, like people under trials in prisons. So, do you think these very painful experience of loss, these tragedies, personal tragedies, have in a way intensified her humanity, and also has given her a spiritual outlook on life, given her a spiritual perspective, a rich spiritual perspective on life? So, how do you uh, discuss, or how do you interpret the role all these terrible personal tragedies play in her shaping her outlook on life?
Personal tragedies happened to her after 2009, when she initially it had happened in 2003, uh, but she was shaken by her first son's death in 2009, and then in quick succession till 2014, I think she lost 3 4 other members of her family. But prior to that also, there are, like, from my interviews that I did with people who knew her, I think she was compassionate from the very beginning. I mean, that compassion was always there, and I think that was, that was always there in her. Uh, Maybe because, number one, her grandmother, she has attributed a lot to her grandmother, saying that, she was the agony aunt of the whole village. Anything happens to anyone in the village, her grandmother, who was educated, who was from Chakradharpur, and she was educated among all the elderly elderly masses in the village, and she was the one, who was there for everybody, for anyone's problem. She was the person who would be the go-to person. And I think that was where, she had learned that, to be compassionate is something that is a must for any human being. And many people have also said something very interesting, which I have been very moved by, is, when I asked somebody about one good quality that you notice, that you have found in Madam Murmu, then he said that she doesn't have anyone who speaks ill about her, or she doesn't have any enemy, she doesn't have any opposition. Of course, presidential election opposition was very different, for a very different reason, but yes, she never had any person who would speak ill about her, who would be caustic about her, who would be talking nonsense about her. And the gentleman also told me the reason why. He said, see, if somebody barks at you, somebody says something nasty to you, and you just keep silent, then that person just says and leaves. It's only when you start arguing, or, giving them back in their own words, that there is an argument, there is different kind of, it takes a different proportion. Madam Murmu is one person who used to take appreciation and criticism in her stride with a smile in her face. She was never the one to rebuke. She was never the one to settle scores with anybody just because somebody told her something bad. That was one characteristics that I think has made her the person she is today, and to take life as it comes to her. Of course, she was very moved. She was very shocked at a time when she lost so many family members. And yes, she bent towards spiritualism in that phase. There were people who used to tell her to get into the Brahma Kumari way of life from 2003 4 onwards, but she actually got into the Brahma Kumari's way of spiritualism after facing a lot of deaths in the family, and she's learnt a lot. She's God fearing. She trusts the doings of whatever happens in her life, and she attributes it to the Lord. Even when she was chosen as the president, the first thing she did was to call one of her close confidants to say that I'm rushing to Delhi. Please offer my prayers to the Lord. That was one of the things, God fearing, and she attributes everything to the God. Her spiritual base is very strong. Maybe after she became a follower of the Brahma Kumari sect, her discipline in life is another point which has made her, these are some things that have made her a perfect person. For me, I think she is a perfect person, a perfect combination of everything that you need to be humble to, you need to be grateful to, need to be saying that
Away from the person.
pardon.
I just said that, well, I think let's turn away from Madame Mumu, the person, to
Yeah,
Madame Mumu, the political figure.
yeah, yeah.
She served as a minister. She
Yes,
served with distinction as the governor of Jharkhand, and now, of
yes,
course, she's the president of India. So, what did you discover about uh, Draupadi Murmu, the politician, Draupadi Murmu, the minister, Draupadi Murmu, the governor? So, does she reveal any significant or any remarkable qualities that prepared her, or that in a way distinguished her, and ultimately prepared her for the elevated position she is enjoying today? So,
yes.
could you talk about her political career as a minister, as a governor, before we talk about the lofty positions she's occupying today?
Yeah,
We're
even when
very,
she was yes, sir.
yeah.
Even when she was chosen as the councillor of Rairangpur NSE, Ward 2, she was the councillor. I think she was the first one who stood with sweepers and workers and the cleaners next to the drain. She would stand, she would personally go to every locality to see. I mean, I think Swachh Bharat mission came pretty late after 2014, but I think she was the one who started it in 1997 when she became the councillor. She started supervising not only her own ward, because she became the vice chairman of the NSE also. She ensured that Rairangpur was turned clean and green. I mean, this devotion to work, this, not every politician, not every councillor does this. There are very few people who actually go to the field to work and simultaneously listen to the grievances of the people. Then, when it came to her term as minister, somebody who did not have any knowledge about ministership, she has told it on her own in an interview that I had no clue about what a minister does. And when she was given the transport ministry, transport and commerce, it was a big surprise for her and a big challenge for her. She took it upon herself as a challenge, because she said, I did not know that the transport ministry is something that looks after, that's not a revenue generation ministry. It's something which it does not, sorry, it does not do any developmental work as such, but it's a revenue churner for the government. And how is it done? It is done from the collections from toll gates, from RTOs and all that. That's something which I was never exposed to, and she took it upon herself. She took the challenge upon herself. She called all her secretaries. She had regular review meetings. She learned from them, which she did not know. She was very open with her colleagues that she doesn't know how to function. As I have mentioned in the book about her first personal secretary, who has said that she was an easy learner. She was a fast learner and an easy learner. She agreed to learn. So that way, she was the one. Her colleagues, BJP colleagues, also say that they've seen her at standing at toll gates for a long time to see how the collections are being done. We do not see many of them doing it today. Even the ministers concerned going to the concerned places to look after all these things, which she did way back in 2003-4. So those are the things definitely that were remarkable about her, and her award as the best MLA in the Odisha Legislative Assembly, because she never missed a single session of the assembly. She prepared her own questions. She prepared her own answers. The questions that were given to her, she would take the answers from everybody, data from everybody, but collate everything together by burning the midnight candle. She would prepare her own answer and speak it every question she was answering in the assembly. I think that is something also which must be credited to her, that very few people can do it today. They need their people to help them, but she was a self-made person. From there to her term as minister and as her governor, if we talk, I think when she became the governor, she was the chancellor of the universities. But at the school level, she transformed the education scene, is what the then Education Minister of Jharkhand has corroborated. She spoke, the Neera Yadav, the then Education Minister of Jharkhand, she spoke reams about Madam Murmu's contribution to completely transform the education scene of even Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, or even the classes in colleges, normal colleges, the vocational trainings. Teachers were involved in lot of cases where they did not have time to attend classes. She summoned lok adalats. She summoned all judges and everybody to, 3, 4 lok adalats were conducted where cases were disposed of and education scene was revamped. And importantly for the tribals, two major acts she refused to give approval to in Jharkhand when she was the governor were the Santhal Pargana Tenancy Act, and there was another tribal act, which both of those she refused to give approval because she felt, after her discussion, she felt those were anti-tribal. And that also led to Raghubar Das government's downfall also. She did not take, I mean, she was chosen by the BJP. The chief minister was from BJP. The government was BJP, but she agreed to take that call of not standing with what the approval seeks from her. No, she straight away refused to approve those two acts. So she knows where she stands. She has a lot of knowledge. She reads a lot of books. She has a lot of grasping ability. She has learnt a lot with life, from life, and with her terms as the councillor, as the minister, MLA, minister, governor, and she puts into practice what she feels right and according to the law. So everything, every step in her life was something that has made her the person she is today.
Okay, let's go back a little because we all know that Madam Murmu was also a teacher in an Aurobindo school. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
For a while, she was teaching at a school. Am I audible?
Yeah, a little disturbance, but I can hear you.
Okay. Madam Murmu, we all know, was a school teacher for a while, for a couple of years or so. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
So, could you talk about her career as a teacher? Did it in any way leave a mark on her personality, or enrich her personality, or taught her something significant? How do her students remember her? Have you interviewed some of her students?
Yes, yes, yes. I think two students from Berhampur, from Rairangpur, who are currently with some working in some firms in Mumbai. I think they were the ones who spoke to me. She was a very loving teacher. That's what they have said. She was a very loving teacher. And of course, I mean, she used to be the most loved teacher also. Students have always been very fond of her classes. When she started teaching, she chose to teach the primary school and the class one, or the kindergarten students, because she thought, if I have to build the foundation of students, I have to do it from the very beginning. So she wanted to take the class of the youngest of them all. And I think she remembered every student's birthday. She used to have chocolates with her as a reward for people who do well in exams, who answer well in exams. And I think she was one of those very few teachers who was the first to reach the school and the last to leave the school. She led the school parades. She was the one who used to, encourage students to talk to her even when she was not in school. She would often, clear their doubts when they came to her home also, finding some problem with some studies. And I think she was the one who took surprise tests, which were very uncommon those days. But students still loved her. Even her daughter, in one of her interviews, had said that my friends used to complain that your mom is the only one who takes a surprise test, and see, so we fail to do well. So that is something, a sense of discipline was always there in her. She tried to inculcate the same into her children and her school children also. So that is why, to instill that sense of discipline, she had told the school management authority that, please give me the youngest of all, give me the kindergarten students, so that from the beginning I can be able to shape them. I can instill discipline into them. I can tell them how to behave, how to talk. Human values are the most important. She wanted to ingrain that in the students. So her fondness of the students was as much as her students' fondness for the teacher. And even her management committee members who are present now also, they fondly remember her as one of the most duty bound teachers who has never ever taken a day's leave apart from her off days or Sundays. So that way she has been a very successful teacher, and that actually she also has said in some places that her group of parents, children and parents, were so much affectionate, were so much fond of her, that winning the Rairanpur seat was not very difficult for her, given that so many parents love to see her as their leader.
Okay. Um, you know so much about Madam Murmu's life, and you have studied her career and everything about her life so thoroughly. Can you cite any incident? Can you refer to any incident in her life that moved you powerfully, profoundly? That any incident in her life which moved you? So, can you think of any such incident that defines her in a way?
Everything, I think there are so many instances which might be a very minuscule when we talk of the larger picture, but I think I cannot particularly cite one instance which has moved me. But yes, a powerful minister who just lost the elections in 2009, she still wanted to serve the people. She came back to Rairangpur, leaving her sons in Bhubaneswar. Um, and then she hears of um, her son's loss. All of a sudden, he dies. And the video footage which I could access of that day, I think I cried that day. It's difficult for me to even describe it, the way she the such a important leader, a tribal leader who has stood by so many causes, who has done so much for the state, for the tribals. And she is someone who was completely shattered, broken. She was I mean, holding her son tightly, and the way she was crying actually moved me a lot. And then within 10 days, she was in among her constituents. I think that was the only occasion where she had broken down, and never ever has she cried publicly after that. And people thought that she would turn inwards, and she actually did for some days. But then she said, people of my constituency, people of the state have given me so much. I cannot just mourn about my only child. I must live for others. I must live for my people. So that is something which has moved me a lot.
Okay. I think now, before taking questions from the audience, I'll ask the last question to you. Put the
Yes.
last question to you, which is the book was published a few days ago. So
Yeah.
already some people must have gone through that. Your friends, maybe your acquaintances, and some unknown people unknown to you. So, have you received any kind of feedback from your readers, any reader? And what do they say about the book? Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. So, have you received any feedback from any reader? And could you share their responses with us?
Yes, I have. To be honest, I've just got two responses, because the book was released on May 10th. By the time people received the book, it must be 12th or 15th. So some of them who have one of them has completed the book, and another person has read a portion of the book. But yes, two viewpoints that I have received is one was, you know uh, was from a friend come acquaintance who said that you have become too touchy with the character. I mean, I thought that it's very natural. and the book progresses in a continuous flow, but the emotional moments suddenly come and shake. So that description, I think you've got yourself too much attached with the subject. And then I also had my opinion that a book was almost it was published in 6 months time, when we deliver a child in 9 months time. So I do not find any difference between the trauma of the pain of childbearing and a book publication. I felt the same kind of attachment to the book, and I feel the same, like, as and when the book comes in front of me, I find it as a my own reflection in it. Of course, I must have been touchy, otherwise it would not have got this kind of a feedback. And the other review that I got was that compressing it within, the one who has completed the book has said that you've compressed so many things into one book, it could have easily become two books. So like, we could have gone through it even more. It gives you a feeling that there should have been more, there should have been more. So that was a thing. Maybe I take it all with a very positive spirit, that yes, now when I think back, I haven't taken everything that people have said, or that I have got to know about the personality. She's now larger than life, and I have tried to do justice to whatever within this limited time sphere and limited word count also. Like, it could not have been possibly a 500-word book, because it would have lost its the people might lose interest in reading such a huge book. And now she's into the term, so maybe after this, just not even a year of her term as president, there are 4 more years, and there are so many things that might happen in her tenure, which could make a maybe a second part of the series. So so these are the two feedbacks which I shared with
Okay.
you.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Kasturi, for sharing your experience of having authored such an exciting book. And let's sincerely hope that you'll write another book on Madame Murmu and present readers with this book. And I think we should take a few questions, if any, from the audience.
Yes.
Namaskar once again, and I would be extending regards to both our guests for today for having such an insightful session, for delivering such an insightful session to all our viewers on our Honorable President of India, Srimati Draupadi Murmu. Thank you, Kasturi ma'am, and thank you, Jatin sir, for joining us today. And I would request all our viewers to stay tuned to Kalinga Literary Festival for more such experience. Thank you.
Thank you.